Psychoanalysis and Homeopathy, Conceptualizing Core of Sickness and Healing. Namaste. Questions of questions in clinical area is what is sickness and what is healing at its core. Psychoanalysis, when in confluence with homeopathy, will give us some idea on the subject. Discussion today excavates this area of unknown with guide Himanshu Vaid. Namaste.
Namaste.
Sir, how do we enter into the center of it and conceptualizing of the core of sickness?
Let us start first with the whole canvas of pathology and then look at what part of this canvas is psychologically driven, and that part of the canvas we can go deeper into. So one way to look at the whole spectrum of sickness is to divide it on the basis of the cause of it. And one way to look at it is there will be one category of sicknesses which will be genetically driven. For example, somebody is born mentally retarded. Somebody is born without proper eyes. Somebody is born only with one hand. So this is one category of sicknesses where we don't have much psychology to do anything about. It's very, very genetically oriented. Second category of sicknesses will be out of physical causes. Like somebody is walking on the road, he meets with an accident, he breaks his bone. So there's nothing psychological about it. It's very physical in nature. Third category of sickness will be based upon pathogens. Like for example, COVID. That regardless of the mind of the person, it affects everybody. So that is the third category of sickness. The fourth category of sickness will be where mind and body both play a role, what we call psychosomatic. And the fifth category of sickness will be where only mind plays a role. So the first three categories, let us leave apart out of our discussion. We focus on category 4 and 5, where feelings have something to do, psychology has something to do with the sickness. And there we see that we can look at sicknesses of two types. One, sicknesses which produce only psychological symptoms. Two, sicknesses which produce biological symptoms. And three, sicknesses which produce both these type of symptoms. That the person has depression and also has diabetes. So whatever is the core stress, that is going in both areas, producing some symptom in the mind and some symptom in the body. Now, here we look at another concept to ground our discussion. Think of any long-standing chronic sickness as heavy as a tree of trauma. So there is a root of the tree, the trunk of the tree, the branches and the leaves. So when somebody comes to us with a symptom which is chronic in nature, it is like we are looking at a leaf attached to the tree. That the root of the sickness somewhere deep below, but presenting sickness is the leaf attached to the leaf. And this is the classical chronic sickness. Contrast this with an acute sickness, which is like a leaf in the wind. The leaf is not attached to any tree, it's just floating free in the wind. For example, I eat too many chilies, and the next day I have acidity. Now that is something which is an acute thing, right? It's like a leaf in the wind. The leaf is not attached to any tree. It's a free leaf. And the free leaf will not relapse and will not go chronic. Whereas the attached leaf, even if you try to heal the leaf, something will come from the root, branches and something, and again give power to that leaf. So from the outside, we are trying to heal the leaf. From the inside, there is a force not to allow it to heal. So we have this kind of a situation. Now what we want to do today is When we say that there is a tree of trauma and the symptoms which are chronic and relapsing are leaves attached to those trees, and it is not possible to treat those leaves without treating the root. So today we are trying to see that how can we conceptualize that root? What is the root made of?
Okay.
What are the variables involved in the root being strong or weak? And why do certain medicines work on the root and certain medicines don't? And if they work on the root, how they would be working on the root? Now, we don't know anything empirically, but we can know it generically, conceptually by applying general thought. So what we will do today is
Okay.
apply general knowledge of psychoanalysis to this whole idea of the root complex, the central complex. And from there, try to see how we can look at the working of homeopathic medicines or not working of homeopathic medicines, or the need for a combination of homeopathy and psychotherapy to address different kind of roots. So this is how we will go into it today, that we focus on psychosomatic and psychological sicknesses which are chronic in nature, which are not based upon a clear stressor. For example, somebody can lose 60 lakh rupees in the
Okay.
stock market and go depressed. Now that is not chronic. It does not have a root. It's not a tree kind of trauma. It's a free leaf that there is a clear stressor, and the moment the stressor goes, he will be okay. But we are
Right.
looking at very chronic sicknesses where there is a tree of trauma and there is a root, and without healing the root, we cannot heal all the leaves because the new leaves keep coming. And this is where we try today to conceptualize trauma, the root of the tree, in psychoanalytic terms and see how it can give some benefit in intersection of psychoanalysis and homeopathy.
Okay. So if we then conceptualize a central psychoanalysis, central psychological causes of the sickness, how does it appear from psychoanalytic vantage point?
So we start with Carl Jung, who defined this core root he called the complex. And he defined the complex by two things. He said it is idea toned with affect. Visualize a strong magnet in the center and iron dust around it. Right? Now, this strong magnet in the center is the idea, and iron dust around it is the affect or feelings. And together, both of them constitute a complex, meaning the patient has a memory of something, that cognitive memory of the event. Let us say some person was beaten up, abused, or humiliated. So there is a cognitive
Hmm.
memory of that event at the center, and there are feelings evoked in that event, whatever the feelings be. It may be a combination of anger, sadness, shame, and all of that. And there is a cognitive memory of the event at the center. So this cognitive event of the memory at the center and these feelings around it, both put together, constitute the complex. And there is some force which connects this magnetic center to the feelings around it, because of which the feelings are not able to go away elsewhere but remain bound to this idea. And this is what gives the long life, the chronic nature to that memory. And obviously, when this kind of a chronic entity becomes too powerful, it starts living itself out through what we call symptoms. So this was Carl Jung's original idea. Now let me make it slightly more elaborate here. Let me share
Hmm.
a diagram to make it more concrete. Uh, can you see it?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So you can look at that complex, I said, idea and affect in this way. there is a core idea at the center of that memory of that event, and then there are feelings, say affect 1, affect 2, affect 3. This may be sadness, this may be anger, this may be helplessness, this may be shame. So they are all associated with that core idea, and the entire thing, the entire feeling and idea combined memory of that event is what constitutes the complex. Now what we say, that the idea and the affect are bound together by some binding forces, because of which the affect does not dissipate out and remains bound with the idea. It's almost like the idea is a magnet and there's some magnetic force, and the feelings are like iron dust around it, and they remain together. Now this is not all in the mental scheme of things. The moment a pathological complex is created with a core idea and very strong affects, obviously the natural healing system of the body comes into play and defenses start playing out, trying to manage this complex. So the defenses also work on that complex. It does not allow the complex a free highway to run its course. Then the healing forces also come in. The natural healing forces which want that this affect should be released and idea should become conscious. Now that's the core of psychoanalysis. That how the healing happens, the unconscious idea becomes conscious, and the affect bound up with the idea is felt and released in catharsis. So the natural healing forces also will start acting to undo this complex and free this energy which is bound up there. So defenses will be at work, healing forces also will be at work. Now how much affect will be generated, that will depend upon many factors. The core will be sensitivity of the person, positive or negative orientation, and life energy available. That will dictate how much affect is generated. And of course, how the person interprets the event. What is the strength of healing forces? It depends upon the natural healing power of the person, depends upon the hydraulic or non-hydraulic nature of the difficulty, environment, and ego effectiveness. How strong will be the defenses? It will be a function of ego effectiveness, ego strength, and environment. So these variables are all dictated one behind the other. But what is the core is this, that there is a core idea, affect surrounding it, healing force is acting on it, defense is acting on it, the force of survival also acts. When you are in a dangerous situation, you are able to suppress far more affect than when you are not in that. Self-developing forces is also a force to develop oneself. That also affects. So this is what one can call, sorry, one more element we missed out. The refractory forces which are present surrounding the whole boundary and also the boundary of this individual affects. And these refractory forces, what they do is they make two defenses active, denial and diversion. So even when we know that we have a problem to solve in ourselves, right, we are not able to concentrate and focus. We are always using denial and diversion. We will think of 100 things but not of our own problem. So the defense of diversion is very common. That we will not focus on our own problem, we will focus on everything else in the world. And we will advise others not to do it. We will advise our patients to focus on the problem, right, and not go out in the world and focus on everything else, and we will precisely do the same. So this is where the refractory element of that thing comes in. That anything from outside comes into it, it refracts it back. It's a kind of an abrasive, what do they call it? Non-conducting thing. I forget the engineering name of it. There's a name for something non-conducting, but anyway, it will come. But this is like a refractory ceramic kind of an outing, which does not allow anything to penetrate it in and deploys denial and diversion. Now, this is how one complex will be there. And generally, this is the core complex. And over a long period of time, small other complexes develop and get related to the core complex, and a tree develops. The tree looks something like this. What we saw up, that was one central complex.
Central
There can be a secondary complex, one secondary complex, two, third, and there may be another central complex which is connected to this. And this in turn will have its own tree. So there can be two trees, or there can be two trees connected to each other. So there will be some picture of the trauma landscape. And obviously all of this is in the unconscious, it's not in the awareness. So if you put Freud's model, it will look something like this, that this whole complex, this whole constellation is below the awareness. So if you use Freud's model, that this is the repression barrier, below is the unconscious, above is the conscious, then this whole thing will be in the unconscious. Man will not be aware that it is in his own mind. So this is how it will be, and this is the way we can look at it. Now, what is important here is that what is the strength of this affect A, 2, 3, 4? What is the strength of this binding force? What is the strength of this defensive force, strength of healing force, and the strength of refractory force? Refractory force spread on the surface, and refractory force spread on this each of the affective packets. That will determine the strength of the complex, how difficult it will be to penetrate and undo the complex, and how long it will take in either homeopathy or therapy to undo this core complex. So this will be like a kind of a generic variable picture of what we call the core complex and the constellation of the core complexes and their relation to the secondary complex. So we don't know in empirical terms what it is, but we know in generic terms what it is.
Right. So then how does the healing get conceptualized in this context?
We can look at healing in different ways. Situation one, we do everything possible and no healing happens. We try all the tricks in homeopathy, nothing happens. We'll try all the tricks in psychotherapy, nothing happens. So one situation is that what the complex is or constellation is something quite contrary to the framework of knowledge we have, and our tools are not working. Which obviously means we need more knowledge about what the core thing is and the limitations of the tools we are deploying. That is one situation. Second situation is that healing takes place. That either the homeopathic remedy is able to go into the complex and undo the whole complex. The idea becomes conscious, the effect is dissipated out, released, and the person is healed. Third situation will be that the remedy is able to penetrate, break some of the bonds, right, and release some effect packets, but not everything. So we have partial relief.
Part healing.
Fourth will be that we are able to break many of the bonds, but after some time they get reconstituted, what we call the relapse. Fifth situation will be that the usual remedy does not work, so we require two of them. The first one to penetrate the refractory layer around the complex, and the second one to actually break the bond between the idea and the effect. So we will have a miasmatic medicine followed by a normal medicine. That the miasmatic medicine will break that refractory layer, which is not allowing the normal medicine to penetrate in. So it is like a bunker buster. Right? What in army they call the bunker buster. That the
Right,
first
right.
bomb you throw on the bunker, it breaks the outer wall, and when the hole is created, you throw the second bomb.
Then you go inside.
So the
Right,
miasm
right.
then becomes like the bunker buster. If you follow the miasm with something second, if the miasmatic medicine is able to undo the whole by itself, then it is just undoing the whole complex by itself. If you require two miasmatic things, then this model we will say the first one is just breaking the refractory barrier outside. The second one is breaking the refractory barrier of the packets inside, and then the medicine is working. Third medicine is working.
Okay.
So, which is breaking the bond between the core idea and the affect packets. So, this is how we will look, and then we will look at aggravation. That in certain cases, the moment you try to penetrate, right, the affect inside is almost like a zip file, and it's like the opening of the zip file which aggravates it. Or the moment you try to penetrate in, the life energy is attracted towards it and it becomes more powerful. What would happen in normal situation of a season change? That the moment season change happens, the life energy level of the body automatically goes up. Everything gets more energy, the positive and the negative, but the negative creates trouble because the complex now is loaded with more energy. So this will be an aggravation situation, and the last situation will be what we call in psychoanalysis the unknown healing. Many times it happens that in long therapy, certain problems never come up in discussion. I can give an example.
Mhm.
One of my teachers gave this example. He was in therapy for 7 years, which is quite a long period. And it was a classical psychoanalytic thing, which is 3 to 5 days a week. So he must be at least 3 days a week. So 3 days
Okay.
a week, 7 years is quite a long thing.
7 years. Yeah, it's very long.
He said in this 7 years, one problem he had never came up. And the problem was he had an unexplained aversion to sweets. There was no biological problem, but he just had an unexplained aversion to sweets. And before the therapy ended, almost sometime before the, say a year before the therapy ended, he started liking sweets.
Oh,
Now, this problem never came up in discussion. It was never addressed consciously. And he gave an example of a tent. If you look at the tent as a problem, then in the tent there is central support system, the bamboo, the central bamboo. And then there are hooks which are uh, put into the ground, dug into the ground, the hooks. So he
hmm.
said, many of the hooks which don't come in discussion, they also get resolved.
Right, right.
Now, how that happens, we don't know. Maybe that it is related to something core which got resolved, and therefore everything
Exactly.
secondary to the core automatically got resolved. That some root was resolved, and therefore the leaf automatically fell. That kind of thing. So this is the last situation where what is not a part of the healing process
No,
gets healed.
right. Interesting.
Yeah. So these are the various types
Right,
of the healing outcomes we see there.
right, right. Now, so then what would it imply in terms of remedy characteristics?
So then we will look at uh, how the remedy is working. Let us say, let me go back to that thing. Uh, let us say there is one remedy which is able to just penetrate and undo the whole thing. Remedy R1. The second remedy, second situation, you don't have any R1 for that situation. You have remedy A, which will break through this, and remedy B, which will undo this. So there can be a remedy which is good in breaking the refractory barrier, a second category of remedies which are good at breaking the relationship between the core idea and affect. Third category of remedy, which will pump up the healing forces. Fourth category of remedy, which will pump up the defenses. Fifth category of remedy, which will pump up the survival and self-developing forces. Sixth category of remedy, which will work on sensitivity or negativity. Seventh category of remedies, which will work on these ego variables. Eighth category, which will work here. So one way to conceptualize this is, how is the remedy working in chronic situations? Because in all chronic situations, we'll always conceptualize the tree of trauma. And we'll look at the root. So this is the structure of the root. And in the root, there are these variables which constitute the root. Then there will be remedies which work on everything. There will be remedies which will work on certain parts. And there will be remedies which will not work on any part. There will be remedies which will aggravate the whole thing. Now, those processes in one way we can model in this way. Now, we don't know empirically because nobody has studied this kind of thing in any way, that how do we look at the internal of the root as a structure and the effect of remedy on each part of that structure. So that is where we will see that, for example, somebody in some group, this can be undone better by a plant kind of remedy. So when a plant remedy is working, it is because it is working here. Sensitivity and ego strength. Say the case of histrionic or hysteria. Any kind of histrionic outburst is essentially because of high sensitivity and low ego strength.
Yes.
So this is where it will be working. Now, when we look at the miasmatic thing, we'll be looking at breaking through that refractory thing. Right? Similarly, we can also look at if there is a particular effect, let us say in this or this, how can we deduce the effect of that remedy with its atomic structure, molecular structure, or general characteristics of the source where it is found. So if something is very good, let us say, in strengthening defenses, now we can always ask those remedies which are good in strengthening defenses, what kind of atomic or molecular structure they have. Right? Or we can ask where they are found. Say, for example, they are found in a flower plant. What are the general characteristics of that flower plant? So either we can relate the source of that action to atomic structure, to molecular structure, or the general nature of the source. So these are the kind of things this model can help us explore.
So means this will help us in plant, animal, minerals, in everything?
Yeah, it can help us in knowing how they are acting, because when you go deeper from a psychoanalytic point of view, there are problems with the classification. For example, let me just go back and show something else. I've always been saying that this classification is a work in progress, because psychoanalytically you can see the problems. And we need a second kind of classification. Let me just go into something. Say this is it. 3 kingdoms: mineral, plant, and animal. Now, the core problem in mineral kingdom will be the structural deficit, the cohesion. Right? So, in homeopathy, you will call it a structural deficit. In psychoanalysis, you will call it cohesion. That the structure is disintegrating very soon and the cohesion is very low. It cannot be together. Either it's already broken or it's very easy to break. prone to breaking.
Break. Okay.
So the problem there is of completeness, and what we see in practice is very high prevalence of somatization and superego problems. Now, when we come to plant kingdom, the core is sensitivity and regulation.
Yes.
Sensitivity is very high, regulation capability is very low. Right? And containment is low, expression is pathological. Here in mineral, the expression is somatized. The ego is strong enough not to do an outward expression, but ego is not strong enough to repress successfully. In this case, ego is not strong enough either to prevent somatization or to do pathological expression. So hysterical expression comes. In animal kingdom, sorry?
Right, I'm getting it.
So animal kingdom, we have this power dynamic of attack, of conquest, of domination, of sadism, of masochism. And there the problem is of victory, defeat, humiliation, revenge. Right? Attack, territory, conquest. So, from psychoanalytic point of view, we will say split is open in all the three. But the ego strength is different. And there is more, animal kingdom is more resolved in terms of Oedipus. These two have huge Oedipal non-resolution apart from a split non-resolution. Here, the split resolution is partial, but Oedipal resolution is quite better compared to the first two. And therefore, if you draw a line of ego strength, you will have plant will be minimum, mineral will be second, animal will be third. So instead of mineral, plant, and animal, which we see in evolutionary terms, it will be plant, mineral, and animal. If we look in terms of ego strength axis. Okay. Now, if you go deeper, let us say on this line, I have put Shankaran's 7 superclasses. Superclass 1, withdrawn and clinging, so on and so forth, 7 superclasses. Now here, I have put general presentation, that in this class, what do we find most? So we find withdrawn and clinging, so we find a lot of depression, dependence. Opening and closing, unstable split, it opens and closes. Now, second row, I have put in this general description, what affects are involved? Sadness, anxiety, anger. Here shame is involved more. Positivity is involved. So you can see in each superclass, if we find most common difficulties, affect involved in those difficulties, and psychoanalytic phenomena involved in those difficulties. So you will see a lot of overlap of affect and lot of overlap of psychoanalytic phenomena, which should not happen if you have a clear-cut classification of superclasses. Ideally, the superclasses should be mutually exclusive. Either in terms of affect, which is very difficult, no superclass classification will be possible in that case, but definitely in terms of phenomena, it can be. That as mutually exclusive superclasses are, the better is the classification. And because this is too much of overlap in every category, I believe that it will undergo a reclassification. Now, so this is something I wanted to share. We have 1 minute to go. Can we continue in the second part after the break?
Yeah. Okay.
10 minutes, we'll reconnect.
Right. Okay.